The tribunal chamber smelled like burnt ozone and disappointment. Commander Vrell'nax of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force sat behind a desk that had witnessed 3,000 years of interstellar disputes, tapping his 6 fingers against the polished surface. Across from him, looking remarkably bored for someone facing 17 counts of unauthorized military engagement, sat Captain Julia Martinez of the Terran Coalition Navy. So, Vrell'nax began, his translator crackling slightly. Captain Martinez, we have reports of human vessels engaging in hostile action across no fewer than 8 sectors. Ships destroyed. Colonies evacuated. Trade routes disrupted. Rather concerning, wouldn't you say? Julia examined her fingernails. Is there a question in there somewhere? Vrell'nax's eye stalks twitched. 3 decades as a peacekeeper, and humans still managed to irritate him in ways he didn't know were possible. The question, Captain, is simple. He leaned forward, all 4 of his eyes narrowing. Who started the war? Julia looked up, blinked once, then smiled in that peculiar way humans did when they found something genuinely amusing. Which one? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled that Vrell'nax felt his secondary stomach clench. Excuse me. Which war? Julia repeated, leaning back in her chair with the casual confidence of someone holding all the cards in a game nobody else knew they were playing. You're going to need to be more specific. We've got a lot going on right now. The Peacekeeper's mandibles clicked involuntarily. He pulled up his data pad, scrolling through reports. The conflict with the Draknari hive in the Andromeda Reach. Oh, that. Julia waved a hand dismissively. They started it. Tried to assimilate one of our mining colonies. Turns out humans don't assimilate well. We're stubborn like that. Also, we really like that colony. Had the best coffee in 3 sectors. Coffee. Vrell'nax's translator struggled with the word. Bitter plant liquid. Keeps us functional. Not important right now. She gestured for him to continue. Vrell'nax scrolled further. The, incident with the Quellan Trade Federation. Julia laughed, actually laughed. They fired first. Well, technically they tried to fire first. Their weapons systems were hilariously outdated. We gave them a chance to surrender. They chose poorly. You disabled 47 of their vessels. And we could have destroyed them. Julia's voice went flat. We didn't. You're welcome. The Peacekeeper felt a headache forming in his primary neural cluster. The skirmish near the Helix Nebula with the Mordvian Collective. Self-defense. They blockaded a humanitarian convoy. We asked nicely. They said no. We asked less nicely. They discovered what a railgun can do to their fancy shields. She paused. Spoiler alert, nothing good. Vrell'nax was scrolling faster now, his movements becoming frantic. The Zypherian Empire? Slavers. The Kresh Dominion. Pirates. The Tauran Republic. They know what they did. What did they do? Julia's expression darkened. They bombed a hospital ship. A clearly marked, completely unarmed medical frigate with 200 patients and staff. So we introduced their leadership to the concept of kinetic bombardment. Very educational. Vrell'nax set down his data pad. His head fins were flattening against his skull, a sign of extreme stress among his people. Captain Martinez. In the past 6 standard months, humanity has engaged in military action with 12 different species. 12. Some civilizations go centuries without a single conflict. Good for them, Julia said cheerfully. Must be nice. How are you not concerned about this? Oh, I'm concerned. Julia stood up, walking to the massive window overlooking the station's central hub. Ships from 100 worlds drifted past, peaceful and serene. I'm concerned that half the species in this galaxy think might makes right. I'm concerned that your peacekeeping force seems more interested in maintaining the status quo than actual justice. I'm concerned that we've been out here less than a century and we've already found 17 slavery operations, 9 genocides in progress, and more pirates than I can count. She turned back to face him, and Vrell'nax saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Not anger, not hatred, just a tired, determined resolve that suggested humanity had seen this all before. You want to know who started the wars, Commander? Go ask the Draknari why they thought eating sentient beings was acceptable. Ask the Quellans why they believed charging a 300% tariff on medical supplies to dying colonies was good business. Ask the Tauran why a hospital ship was a legitimate target. She walked back to the desk, placing both hands on it, leaning in close. Or, she said softly, dangerously, You could ask yourself why you're more interested in prosecuting the people who stopped atrocities than the ones committing them. The silence in the tribunal chamber stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Vrell'nax stared at the human captain, his translator making small whirring sounds as if it too was struggling to process what it had just heard. Finally, he managed to speak. You cannot simply appoint yourselves as the galaxy's police force, Captain. Funny, Julia said, settling back into her chair. I thought that was your job. How's that working out, by the way? The Peacekeeper's fins flushed purple. We operate through diplomatic channels. We build consensus. We negotiate. While people die. While we prevent larger conflicts from erupting. Julia pulled out her own data pad, swiping through it with practiced ease. Let's talk about larger conflicts, shall we? The Vrell'nax genocide. 2 billion dead. Your peacekeeping force held 14 committee meetings and issued a strongly worded statement. The Outer Rim slave trade. Operating for 60 years under your watch. 12 million sentients in bondage. Your response? Economic sanctions that the perpetrators ignored. She looked up, eyes hard. Want me to continue? Because I've got about 300 more examples loaded up here, and my schedule's pretty clear. Vrell'nax felt his confidence crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. We have protocols, procedures. We cannot simply rush into every crisis with weapons blazing. No, Julia agreed. But you could rush into some of them. Maybe the ones involving hospitals. Just a thought. The commander stood, pacing to the window where Julia had stood moments before. His reflection stared back at him, looking older than he remembered. Do you understand what you're doing? Humanity has been part of the galactic community for less than a standard century. You're making enemies. Powerful enemies. We're making the right enemies, Julia countered. And the right friends. Funny thing happens when you actually help people instead of filing paperwork about their suffering. They remember it. The council will not tolerate this indefinitely. Julia stood as well, her posture shifting from casual to military precision. Then the council needs to decide what kind of galaxy it wants. Because here's the thing, Commander. Humans? We've got a saying back home. All it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I've heard that phrase, Vrell'nax said quietly. Your philosophers are quite quotable. Yeah, well, we didn't come up with those sayings in a vacuum. We learned them the hard way. We spent thousands of years fighting wars on our own planet. Tribes against tribes. Nations against nations. Ideologies clashing until cities burned and millions died. Her voice dropped, weighted with history. We know exactly what happens when the good people stand by and watch. We've been on both sides of that equation. She walked to the door, then paused. You asked me who started the wars. The answer is, we didn't. But we're sure as hell going to finish them. Wait. Vrell'nax turned from the window. What am I supposed to tell the council? Julia considered this for a moment, then grinned. That infuriating, confident, very human grin. Tell them humanity is here now. Tell them we don't play by the old rules where might makes right and bureaucracy protects the comfortable while the vulnerable suffer. Tell them we're the species that looked at our own capacity for destruction and decided never again. She moved toward the exit, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. And Commander? Tell them this tribunal was a waste of everyone's time, because in 6 months, we'll probably have another dozen conflicts on your desk. Not because we're warmongers, but because we actually give a damn. Vrell'nax watched her leave, her footsteps echoing in the corridor outside. He stood there for a long time, staring at his data pad full of human military engagements. Each one documented, each one investigated, and each one, he realized with growing discomfort, completely justified that he thought about the species humanity had fought, the ones who enslaved and murdered and conquered, the ones his peacekeeping force had negotiated with, compromised with, made excuses for, the ones who had counted on civilized people being too civilized to stop them. His translator beeped softly as a message came through. His aide, asking about the tribunal results, asking what charges would be filed, what penalties recommended. Vrell'nax looked at the message for a long moment. Then he began typing. No charges filed. Case dismissed. Recommend increased cooperation with Terran Coalition military operations. Addendum. Recommend comprehensive review of peacekeeping force engagement protocols. He paused, then added one final line. Personal note. We may have been doing this wrong for a very long time. He sent the message and walked to the window, watching a human frigate drift past the station. smaller than most military vessels in the fleet. Faster too. And on its hull, visible even from this distance, was painted a simple phrase in a dozen languages. Never again. Vrell'nax had asked who started the wars. Now he understood the real question was, who was going to have the courage to actually end them? Apparently, that answer was humans, and somehow, despite everything, that didn't worry him as much as it probably should have.